Dad? 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 Where'd you go? Dad? 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 Dad?
Turkey. No more turkey. No more turkey. No more beans. No more turkey. No more turkey. No more turkey. I'm stuck. Oh, all right. Happy Thanksgiving and welcome to the Steve Z Chronicles. We sure appreciate you tuning in with us today and checking things out on the video. I'd like to ask you right away, please hit that subscribe button. And if after the video's done or halfway through, if that's where you decide to leave me, hit like, okay? Let me know that you like the video. That'd be awesome. Leave comments. That'd be awesome. There's a little notification bell as well. If you hit that notification bell every single time I send a video out and publish that video, it will send you an email saying, hey, Steve Z just sent out another video. And so if you're into that kind of thing, please make sure that you hit that bell. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Hope that you have taken the time to reflect on how good you have it and taken the time to focus in on being grateful for all that we enjoy. There's so much that we enjoy. I'm so thankful to be an American today. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have grown up in this country, and very thankful for some of the privileges that we get to enjoy. And part of Thanksgiving is spending time with family. We've just got done actually from a Thanksgiving dinner with my mom and siblings and some family there. Of course, my wife and children were there with us. Enjoyed that time of family. And now we are preparing and getting ready for a trip over to Iowa, where my younger brother lives, him and his wife and two sweet daughters, and they live over in Pleasantville, Iowa. And so we're going to drive over there tomorrow morning and try to head out early and get over there. And one of the things we were thinking about, one of the things that we do, or I do, before I travel is I want to make sure that the vehicle is safe and sound for that travel. I'm bringing my family on the road, and we'll be traveling at highway speeds, which is somewhere around 70 miles per hour. And so I want to make sure that our vehicle is roadworthy and ready for that travel. And so I wanted to take you all along for that, because I think sometimes we can end up spending a good amount of money for a mechanic to do some of these things that are pretty simple for us to do. I think making sure at least looking things over and seeing if there's any red flags. If you are even somewhat mechanically inclined, this is something I think that could save you a lot of money, even if it's $100 for 1 hour of an inspection. If you don't see anything yourself, you could save yourself some money being able to just check fluids, check tire pressures, things like that, making sure that your tire pressures are good, that you're not about to have a blowout on the highway, making sure that you have a spare, different things like that. Always look underneath the vehicle and double check, make sure that there's nothing dangling, nothing hanging, no cables, no wires, different things like that. I'm gonna go ahead and take you with us. I am gonna tell you about this car a little bit. I'm not gonna say in a review by any means. This is a 2011 Ford Explorer. It's the limited editions, 4-wheel drive. It is not only 4-wheel drive, but it's got the 3.5 liter V6 engine. It's non-turbocharged. But this is a fantastic vehicle. This is my wife's favorite car that she's had so far. We've had a couple pretty nice cars, but this is, my wife says, by far her favorite car. It runs so smooth down the road. It gets decent fuel economy, 21 to 23 miles a gallon on the highway, depending on how you drive and what you're. I'm sure tomorrow when we're loaded up with 7 passengers, my mom's coming with us, and all of our luggage, I am quite confident that we will not hit 23 miles a gallon tomorrow. But overall, the fuel economy is great, and for what it is and for what you have, and it does have a decent payload for towing capacity. And I just overall very happy about it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and make sure that things are looking good. So on these ones, the hood latch is pretty simple. It's just right here. You pull the hood latch up. On your vehicle, it's gonna be a little bit different, I'm sure, different location, but usually somewhere in that There's a secondary latch. There's a safety latch, I guess they call it. So you have a primary latch that holds it down, and you got a safety latch that you have to lift. Now, normally, if you're not used to the car, you look underneath there and you find out where that lever is. Sometimes you're pushing one way, sometimes you're pushing to another, sometimes you're pushing down. So on this one, you push it over to the left and you lift it up. Grab your hood prop. Make sure your hood prop is set in place. That way, everything's safe and that thing's not gonna fall on your head. Okay. Right now we don't have any check engine lights on, so I don't have to really worry about electronics or anything like that. I'm just going to do some of the basic things. Come on up over here, Sam. Point right down in here. You see right down here, can you get this? Are you picking that up on the camera? This right here is your oil dipstick. This is for checking the engine oil level. This dipstick goes down into the engine, goes all the way down, and actually shows the level in the oil pan, which is at the bottom of the engine. It's very important to make sure that you're checking your oil, because the oil is what lubricates your engine and keeps the metal on metal lubricated, so that it can keep moving without getting wrecked, overheated, and the metal will overheat, and then it'll actually break. And so this keeps your engine lubricated. So you got to make sure that you check your oil before, you check your oil regularly. On this particular engine, this 3.5 was designed kind of weirdly, poorly. I call it a poor design. What happened is they decided to put the water pump inside the case where the timing chain is, and it's actually driven by the timing chain. So if the water pump goes bad and it starts to leak water, which that's typically what happens when a water pump goes bad, it's going to leak water into your engine oil. So if you have one of these Ford Explorers, they're wonderful cars, they last a good long time, but you've got to make sure. This one's at 100,000, just a little over 100,000 miles, and so you have to make sure that you are you have to check the oil on these things regularly, just to make sure that if that water pump goes, that you catch water in the oil very quickly, because water and oil don't mix, and it will cause the oil to become frothy. It'll lose its viscosity. It will stop lubricating the engine, and that will be a very dangerous thing for the engine. So right now we're going to go ahead and check this oil real quick. I'm going to pull this out, and just so happens I have a little piece of paper in here I can take and wipe that off. Have a little rag or napkin or paper towel with you. Wipe it off, you put it back in the hole. Very important that you make sure it's seated all the way down so that you get a good reading, an accurate reading. Pull it back out. And this is showing that I am just a hair under full. I'm fine. I'm going to take some oil with me for our trip, in case when I check it when we're over there and it's a little lower, I might put some in there. But it's not even a half quart low. This is usually a quart indicator. That little hash mark in between. I'll wipe the oil off so that you can see that a little better. This is normally, and my wife was just running this a few minutes ago, and so it may actually be very well topped off once it sits and all the oil falls down into the pan. But these hash marks right here, that's your safe zone, and those hash marks basically are usually a quart indicator. Typically they're a quart indicator. When that's all the way down to the bottom, you can add a full quart safely. You don't want to overfill your oil. If you overfill your oil, what can happen is that actually the crank in the bottom of your oil will actually splash against that oil that's in the oil pan. So the oil in the oil pan normally is pushed up by an oil pump, and it's pushed up to the top and it falls back down through all the system, and it's lubricating the system like that. Well, if your crank that's constantly spinning at a pretty fast RPM, revolutions per minute, if that crank is touching the oil in the oil pan, it kind of splashing it around actually froths it up. It stirs it up, bubbles it up, froths it up, and that too can affect the oil viscosity and the ability for it to be to cool down and keep cool, so that it's effectively lubricating your engine. So we're going to go ahead and stick this back in here. I am confident that our oil is just fine. Then we come on over here, and I think I got my light on in here. I don't know if you can see this. This is kind of getting a little dark this evening. I can tell, and I'm glad I checked, that my water level is actually kind of low. So you can see that the water level, try to get my hand in here, the water level's right there, but it's supposed to be up into here. Now that's probably fine The overflow reservoir is probably okay to be right there. I haven't had any issues with overheating or any warning lights coming on or anything like that. But just I like to be meticulous about this kind of stuff, and so I'm going to make sure that gets topped off before we take off tomorrow. Now, I'm not going to be able to show you to do that, but I will show you how to do that. I'm not going to show you in the video doing that. But if you look at this cap right here, is you just take this cap off. Make sure that if your car is hot and fresh, that you take that off slowly, just so make sure it doesn't splash up in your face. But you just add that in there. You make sure you keep an eye on that level, that gauge down there, that level. Make sure that you fill it in between that gauge. I usually take it to the top line of that gauge, obviously. I just usually, for your windshield wiper fluid, I just kind of wait till I'm out and then I fill it up. So I'm not going to really check that. I'm not even sure if there is a way to check it. It's unnecessary to do so. You come back over to this side of the car. And this is another important thing I think sometimes people overlook as well. Let's see, you trade me spots and get over here. And if you see, this right here is the hydraulic fluid for your brake system, and your brake system needs this for you to have an effective and safe braking system. Right here is maximum, right there is minimum, and from what I can tell, let me see, my fluid is right there at the maximum level. So if it weren't, I could add some right here, and then you put that top back in there, and that's looking pretty good. That's looking just fine, so I know I don't have to worry about that. I have recently checked the air filter. This right here is the housing to the air filter. There's a latch right here, and there's a latch on the other side, and you pop that latch off, and there's a kind of a tongue and groove system on this side. You push it out, and you pull up, lifting it up, and then you can lift this up out of the way. And then there's a filter underneath there, and you check and make sure that that filter's not dirty. The engine needs fuel to burn, but it also needs oxygen to be mixed with that fuel so that it burns properly. And so for fuel economy, for power, all of those things can be affected with a dirty air filter. So you got to make sure that you check your air filter. I just checked this recently, and so I'm not going to go through the trouble of popping that cap off at this point, but it is very important to check. Just recently had it into the transmission shop because I've got a little bit of a transmission leak out of one of the bolts on the case, and so they've just recently topped off the transmission fluid, so I know I'm good. But there is a way of checking the transmission fluid. Now, some of the newer modern cars, they have what you call a sealed transmission. A lot of Toyota cars have that, and you can't check your transmission fluid, so you really have to check with your owner's manual or YouTube video your specific vehicle if you don't have a Ford Explorer, and find out exactly where that dipstick is for the transmission fluid. But that's very important to check as well, because if your transmission fluid is low, it could cause the transmission to shift poorly and to shift improperly. One of the worst things for a transmission is heat. And if that lubricant, that hydraulic fluid or that transmission fluid is not lubricating that transmission because it's not enough in there to do its job, that heat will destroy that transmission, and transmissions are extremely expensive. Transmissions are usually the weak point on many of our modern vehicles, and so that's something that you really want to keep up on and you want to check. So I'm going to draw your attention right down here. I'm going to use this flashlight. Hopefully you can see this thing. Alright, so right there, I've got it lit up pretty good. Right down there, and basically what I'm doing, I'm going to kind of pull it back out here. Alright, this is the front of the engine. Front of the engine. There's your oil fill, your dipstick. To the right down here, there's your air filter housing. And then you slide down in here, and you can see just down there, barely within arm's reach, is the transmission cap, or that's also the fill cap, but it's also the dipstick is underneath the fill cap. And so what you do for this is these need to be running when you're actually checking the fluid. It needs to be running and in neutral, and so you want to make sure you chuck your wheels for safety so that it can't roll over you, especially if you're on a hill. And then you can safely have this running in neutral, and then you can pull that cap off just like we did with the oil. Wipe it off so that you get a fresh start, push it back in there, screw it down, unscrew it, pull it back out, and then you can see where your level is. It's not the easiest thing to get at, but as you can see, there's a dipstick right there. This does need to be warm or hot. Okay, you want it to be been ran for a little while. That is typically usually a core indicator as well, but you definitely want to make sure you add if you're low on your transmission fluid. And so you can see, I don't know if you can see that or not, so it's not going to focus on it. Anyway, that says hot, that says CHK for check. Okay, you know what, for fun, I think I'm going to start this. And I think we're going to go ahead and start this thing for fun real quick, and just to check the transmission fluid, make sure it's doing good. It is pretty warm. My wife just got done driving it. It's not super hot, but it should give us a pretty accurate level. All right, so on this, I love this feature here. It's got, you can actually change the different positions of where you're seating by just hitting these buttons here. You set it where you want it to, and then you hold that button down till it beeps, and then you're good to go. I'm setting number 2. My wife's setting number 1. And our teenage daughter is setting number 3. Also, another awesome feature about this car that I absolutely love is the keyless feature. Now, I'm sure that later on in the future we're going to have problems with the start button, but while it's working good, it is really cool. I've got the key fob in my pocket. I sit down. I don't have to dig in my pocket for keys and try to fumble around with pockets. I come in here, I push the brake, and I hit the start button. Boom, it started. That's it. I'm going to use the parking brake. And that parking brake will hold it in position. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this thing right in neutral, okay? So I've got this thing set in neutral. And I'm going to go back out and I'm going to put that dipstick in there from the transmission. So I'm going to stick that back down in there very carefully. All your fans, there are some fans right here in the front, so you got to be careful of these things, okay? Don't wear loose clothing. That's one of your worst, the most dangerous things you could do when you're working or messing around with your vehicle, is wearing loose clothing. Alright? I know a friend of mine, he actually had gotten, I'm assuming, I think it was clothing stuck in, and it pulled his fingers into the belt, and it took his thumb off, and he had to have that thumb, they put one of his toes on his thumb. Pretty cool looking, actually. Kind of gross, but pretty cool looking. Okay, so I've pushed that down in there. I know that all I'd have to do is tighten it so it's flat, it's not going to go any deeper. So now I'm going to pull it straight back out. And I'm going to have a look-see. And I see fluid on there, and so I think I'm happy with that. Okay. Yep, it's basically, it's totally topped off, which is good because I did get this serviced about 2 months ago, and that's when they told me that there was a little bit of a leak there. They had to add just a little bit to top it off, and they told me, it's such a small leak, and it's going to cost a lot of money, about $400 to $500 for them to fix it. So they said if it's not leaking a ton and you can deal with, put it off for a little while as long as you're not leaking a lot. And that's been a couple months ago, and it looks like it's still topped off. So whatever that leak is, it must be just a little bit of a drip seepage there. I will eventually get it fixed just because I can't stand even having a seepage. There's never puddles underneath my wife's car, so it's not leaking bad at all. It's just kind of seeping down and kind of runs along the transmission, but it's a very, very, very small leak. All right, next thing is tires. All right, again, very sorry for the lighting. I'm sure the low light is not that great, so please forgive me ahead of time on that lighting. Using the flashlight here to try to help keep us rolling here. But if you look at these, if you look at this door strip right here, this door strip will actually tell you the size of the dimensions. It'll also tell you the cold tire pressure, and so 35 psi, 35 psi, and if you had the size 165 ADD17, though that would be 60 pounds. That's pretty wild, but 35 is what we're going to be shooting for. And so let me go grab a air gauge real quick. Okay, so when you come to this front tire, this is right here, your air nozzle on your tire, and you take the cap off of it. Okay, you have a air gauge, tire pressure air gauge. This one's made for trucks, so it goes pretty high, but it'll work fine for this. Again, reminder, we're looking for 35 pounds of pressure, and we have a hair over 35. I'm calling it probably 36, which is totally fine. And what we'll do is we'll check all of them, and we'll make sure that they're all the same. This one doesn't have a cap on it, so must be okay. And again, see that line? It's maybe it would be considered 36 pounds, but that's perfect. I'm happy with that. It's the exact same as the other side. This tire, I think while we're in Iowa, I'm going to stop by Discount Tire and get our tires replaced because they're all getting kind of worn. But just recently I had a alignment done at Muffler Man, And so now that my tires are all aligned, I had a little bit of front end work done. Now I can get new tires and feel confident that they're not going to wear weird. I believe that this tire, before we bought it, was probably on one of the fronts and it was out of alignment and it has wore funny. Probably shouldn't even run this. I do have a spare, so if it goes out, and it's on the back, so I'm going to go ahead and risk it. If you're in that situation and you're asking, do I risk it? Don't risk it. I'm going to tell you, don't risk it, okay? I'm going to risk it. Been doing this long enough, I think I'll be okay. There's many of discount tires on the way, and so if it pops, we'll get tires on the way, but we should be okay. And it's on the back. I would never ever run something like that on your steer tires. That's a rollover waiting to happen. Always make sure that you're very careful with that, okay? Nozzle, again, it's holding pressure very well, exactly the same pressure as the other ones. Now you might say, well, Steve Z, why are you checking the tires? You have electronics on these newer cars that tell you if you got a lower tire, and that's fine and that's good, and in most cases you'll be probably just fine with that. But I'm kind of old school. I want to see what the pressure is. Personally, I want to go through and I want to check the pressure on every tire myself. I want to be able to say I've seen it and it's at 35, 36 pounds of pressure. I'm happy with that. And again, we're showing 35, 36 pounds of pressure. Perfect. Perfect. As I checked the pressure on all of these, I also was eyeballing, make sure that there was nothing weird. That one tire is the only one that's kind of wore funny. I believe that was on the front before we bought the car, and that's why. It was because it was out of alignment, and so that's why that has wore funny. So we're gonna get some new tires for this thing here pretty soon, and we do need to do that. I was hoping to do that before this week. It just didn't work out financially, and so we're gonna get on that though very quickly. We definitely need some new tires. Another good idea, a very good idea, especially if you're risking a bald tire, is not climbing in here and going to sleep. It is coming in here and lifting up your spare tire hole here. And there is a nozzle right here. And take that air nozzle and make sure. See, that one is at 20 pounds. It don't feel too soft. It's not flat. I think I'm going to air that up before we leave. Just cause I think that might be the safe and the right thing to do, is to air that up before we take off, just in case we have to use it. I would much rather just make sure that that's good to go. I mean, I'm sure I could get to somewhere with 20 pounds, but it's not too hard to air stuff up, so you might as well just air it up and do it right the first time. Okay, let's go ahead and shut this thing.
On.
All right, before we run out of daylight completely, which we are gotta be getting really close to that, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna put that prop back down where it's supposed to go. We'll go ahead and shut this, and I'm gonna make sure that that hood latched good. Try to grab one of the corners, and I'm gonna pull up a little bit on that because I certainly don't want that to fly up on me while I'm driving down the road. Now I'm gonna do this off camera in a minute here, but it is always good to check your lights. Make sure that your lights are all working. You don't want to get pulled over. So what I'm going to do is, what a good thing to do is you check, make sure that your low beams are working, your high beams are working, make sure that your turn signals are all working, your brake lights are working, your tail lights are working, and all those different things are working. And replace the bulbs if they are blown. Usually a pretty simple and inexpensive fix. Make sure you do it. These are all simple things. So hopefully, by what I showed you today, that you could do this, and this video is going to be a pretty short video, but I think that you could do this yourself in about a 30 minutes to an hour of time just looking over your vehicle. So I also check and make sure underneath that there's nothing dangling, just because you don't want to get your muffler ripped off, and just kind of trying to foresee problems in the future so that you can get them addressed before you go on any long trips. So tomorrow we're going to be heading out early in the morning, heading down to Iowa, over to Iowa to see my brother. I'm hoping to make a video with him smoking his turkey. We lived over there for 2 years. We loved Iowa, loved the people of Iowa, but we're going to go visit them and enjoy some time of fellowship and hanging out with family over there. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up today. I do want to just thank you again so much for watching these videos. Really hope that you had a great Thanksgiving. Hope that you enjoyed time with family, and really do wish that for you. I hope that you realize how good you have it. I believe the poorest poorest in this country have it better off than many across this world today. And so be a thankful people. I promise you, I say this often to our church folk. I believe that your life will be better when you take time to be thankful for what you have. As you are thankful for what you have, that is going to produce a contentment about what you have. You're going to be thankful. You're going to realize how much you actually have, and how much striving, unnecessary striving is taking place, and the stress that goes along with striving to get things that you don't need. You already have so many things. And so be thankful for what you got, and make sure that you spend time being grateful. Let your family know that you're thankful. Let the Lord know that you're thankful. For all good gifts come from above. I believe that with all my heart. And so make sure that you are a grateful people. Make sure you're being thankful. One last look at our touring wagon for the next few days. And again, thank you for watching. Remember, Jesus loves you. So do I. God bless you. Have a good night.